Have you ever stayed silent, not because you didn't know what to say, but because you were afraid to say it wrong? Maybe the words were in your head, ready to come out, but something stopped you. Fear. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of sounding strange. Fear of being judged. If that's ever happened to you, then this episode is just for you. Because today, we're going to talk about something that holds back so many English learners, not their grammar, not their vocabulary, but their fear. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how to stop letting fear steal your words. Hi there, and welcome back to Easy Peasy English, the podcast where we make learning English simple, fun, and focused on what really matters, your confidence and communication. Whether you're tuning in from your kitchen, your commute, or just lying in bed scrolling through YouTube, thank you for being here with me today. It means a lot that you've chosen this moment to grow your English. Let's get real for a second. Fear is sneaky. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It says things like, "You're not ready," or, "What if they don't understand you," or the worst one, "Don't say anything, you'll embarrass yourself." And the more we listen to that fear, the smaller our voice becomes. Until one day, we stop trying altogether. But here's the truth, that fear isn't protecting you. It's holding you back. Because every time you choose silence instead of trying, you're giving fear more power, and taking power away from your progress. Think back to a time when you wanted to speak up in English, maybe in a class, a conversation, or even just to order food, and you hesitated. The words were there, but you didn't say them. Afterward, you probably thought, "Ugh, I should have said something." That regret? That silence? That's not because you were bad at English. That's because fear got there first. And fear is clever. It remembers every little mistake you've ever made. Every awkward pause. Every time someone didn't understand you. It replays those moments again and again, like they define your whole English journey. But that's not fair. What about the times you did speak clearly? The conversations that did go well? The words you did remember? Why doesn't fear ever bring those up? Because fear isn't here to help you grow. It's here to keep you safe. Safe from embarrassment. Safe from discomfort. Safe from feeling exposed. But here's the problem, growth and safety rarely live in the same place. If you want to grow, you have to take a risk. And that means speaking, even if your voice shakes. There's a learner I once spoke to, a woman who had studied English for years but almost never spoke it. She said, "I'm scared of sounding stupid." But when I asked her to speak, she was clear, thoughtful, and easy to understand. Her fear had been lying to her for years. And she had believed it. She had been quiet not because she wasn't capable, but because she was scared. The moment she started speaking regularly, everything changed. Her confidence didn't appear magically, it grew slowly. She made mistakes, yes. But she survived them. And with every conversation, her fear got smaller. Not because it disappeared, but because she stopped giving it all the power. And that's what I want for you. I want you to stop giving fear your microphone. I want you to say, "Yes, I'm nervous, but I'm speaking anyway." Because that's real courage. Not waiting until you're fearless, but speaking in spite of the fear. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need big words or perfect grammar or a native accent. You just need to try. You need to open your mouth and say the thing. Even if it's slow. Even if it's simple. Even if it's awkward. Because every time you do, you're proving to yourself that fear isn't in charge anymore, you are. And the more you speak, the more you'll realize that most people don't care about your mistakes. They care about your message. They care about you. The connection you're trying to make matters more than the perfection you're chasing. So from today, I want you to remember this, your voice matters. Your words matter. Don't let fear steal them. Speak, even if your heart races. Even if your grammar isn't perfect. Even if you make a mistake. Because every sentence you say in English is a win. Every attempt is a step forward. This is your journey. And your voice deserves to be heard along the way. Because here's something I want you to remember, every confident speaker you admire was once scared too. Every smooth sentence, every fluent conversation, every strong accent, all of that started with shaky words and nervous energy. Confidence doesn't appear magically. It's not something you wake up with one day. It's something you build, brick by brick, with every attempt. And fear? Fear only has power when you listen to it more than your dreams. I know many learners who spend hours and hours studying vocabulary lists, grammar books, and pronunciation guides. And yes, those things can be helpful, but none of them will matter if you never open your mouth. Because the real language lives in your voice. In the messy, beautiful act of trying. And fear will tell you that you're not ready. But you are. You are ready to begin. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. And that willingness? That matters more than any textbook ever will. Think of learning English like learning to swim. You can read all the books about swimming. Watch all the videos. Memorize every move. But at some point, you have to get in the water. Yes, you'll feel clumsy. Yes, you'll splash and sink and kick too hard. But that's the only way to swim, by doing it. And speaking English is the same. You don't learn it just by reading or listening. You learn it by using it. By trying. By falling. By getting back up. I once heard from a learner who avoided speaking English for years, even though she was studying every day. She told me, "I'm just not confident enough to speak yet." But here's the thing, confidence doesn't come before speaking. It comes because of it. You don't wait to feel ready. You speak, and the readiness comes after. And you know what? When she finally started speaking, even just one sentence a day, everything changed. She realized that most people were kind. That making a mistake wasn't the end of the world. That the fear was worse in her head than in real life. She said, "It's like I was standing outside a door for years, and it was never even locked." So ask yourself, what doors are you standing in front of right now? What conversations have you been avoiding because of fear? What chances to connect have you walked away from because you thought you weren't good enough? Here's the truth, you don't need to speak perfectly. You need to speak honestly. With heart. With effort. With courage. And when you speak from that place, even if your grammar is off, even if you forget a word, people listen. People feel it. Because real connection doesn't come from perfect sentences. It comes from authentic ones. And if someone ever makes fun of your mistakes, that's not about you. That's about them. Their opinion doesn't define your progress. Their attitude doesn't deserve your silence. You're allowed to be imperfect. You're allowed to learn out loud. The world needs more people who are willing to speak, even when their voice shakes. And if you're one of those people, then you are already far ahead of those who stay silent out of fear. So don't let one awkward moment define your journey. Don't let one difficult conversation convince you to stop. Let it teach you. Let it stretch you. Let it remind you that growth always feels a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a version of you 6 months from now. A version of you who speaks more often. Who isn't afraid to ask questions in English. Who joins conversations instead of avoiding them. Who laughs at mistakes instead of hiding from them. That version of you. It's not a dream. It's not a fantasy. It's just the result of small, consistent courage, starting today. Because courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Start small. Say one sentence to a friend. Join a short English conversation group. Leave a comment on a video. Record a short voice note. Every little action chips away at fear. Every attempt proves to your brain, look, we're doing it. We're not frozen anymore. And eventually, speaking won't feel so scary. It'll start to feel natural. Familiar. Free. But that freedom doesn't come from staying quiet. It comes from speaking before you feel ready. That's the hard truth. And also the beautiful one. You're not supposed to feel fearless. You're supposed to speak despite the fear. And if you do that, just once a day, you'll be amazed at the transformation that happens. Not just in your English, but in your confidence. In the way you carry yourself. In the way you look people in the eye when you speak. Because suddenly, your voice isn't a source of shame. It becomes a source of pride. And isn't that the goal? To not just know English, but to use it with joy, with clarity, with you in every sentence. And remember, you don't need to sound like anyone else. You don't need to speak fast, or use long words, or lose your accent. You just need to be understood. You just need to be brave. When I think about my favorite English speakers, they're not the ones who speak perfectly. They're the ones who speak with heart. Who speak with honesty. Who speak even when it's hard. And if that's you, if you're still here, still listening, still learning, still trying, then I already know something important about you. You are strong. You are capable. And you are growing. And sometimes, the biggest growth doesn't show up as a new word or a grammar rule. Sometimes it shows up as a tiny decision, to open your mouth and speak, when you could have stayed quiet. That's where the real progress lives. So if fear is still there, whispering in your ear, just smile. Say, I hear you, but I'm speaking anyway. Let fear come along for the ride, but don't let it drive. This is your journey. Your voice. Your growth. You've already come so far. And you're just getting started. You know, one of the biggest lies fear tells us is this: you're the only one who feels this way. But that's not true. Not even close. Every English learner, even the confident ones, have moments of doubt. Of silence. Of second-guessing themselves. They think, what if I sound stupid? What if people laugh at my accent? What if I say something wrong and they never take me seriously again? Let me tell you this, those thoughts are normal. But they are not the truth. The truth is, your accent tells a story. Your mistakes show effort. Your pauses are signs of courage, not weakness. The most powerful English speakers I've ever met were not the ones who sounded like native speakers. They were the ones who spoke anyway. They showed up to conversations with heart, not perfection. And people felt that. They listened. Because in real life, outside of grammar books and language exams, connection matters more than correctness. Let me share a story with you. A listener once messaged me after a podcast episode. She said, I've studied English for 10 years, but I still freeze when I have to talk to someone in real life. I feel like I become a different person. Quiet. Shy. Not myself. And that message broke my heart. Because I know how many people feel the same. But I also know what happens when you stop judging your English and start using it. You find your voice again. You stop trying to be someone else. You start being yourself, in English. That listener decided to start small. She challenged herself to say one sentence a day to someone in English. At first, it was scary. But after a few days, it became easier. And after a few weeks, something changed. She didn't just speak more, she smiled more. She laughed more. She became herself, again, but now with English in her pocket. That's the real goal. Not to pass a test. Not to impress people. But to become yourself, confidently, clearly, in a second language. And to do that, you have to let go of the pressure to be perfect. Ask yourself this: when a non-native speaker speaks your language, do you judge them? Probably not. You admire them. You respect them for trying. You lean in. You want to understand. You see the effort, and that's beautiful. So why don't you give yourself that same kindness? Why do you expect yourself to speak like a native, even though you're still learning? Here's something to hold close. Every mistake you make in English is a sign that you're trying. And trying is how we grow. Every toddler stumbles before they run. Every singer hits wrong notes before they find their voice. Every writer spells words wrong before they learn the rhythm of a sentence. That's how learning works, with effort, with repetition, with messiness. But fear wants it to be clean. Fear wants you to succeed on the first try. And when you don't, fear says, "See? I told you. You're not good enough." But you are. You are good enough because you're trying. And the more you try, the more your brain learns that fear doesn't control you. And guess what happens next? You speak more. You understand more. You connect more. And the joy you feel? That's not from knowing every word, that's from knowing you were brave enough to use the words you did know. Another learner once told me, "I used to think English was a mountain I had to climb. But now I see it more like a garden I'm growing." Isn't that a beautiful way to think about it? Every word you learn is like planting a seed. Every sentence you try is like watering it. And some days, you won't see any change. It'll look like nothing is happening. But underneath, things are growing. Quietly. Steadily. And one day, you'll look back and say, "Wow. I remember when I couldn't even say that sentence. And now I just said it without thinking." That's the magic of consistency. That's the power of not giving up. That's what happens when you stop letting fear run the show. And here's another truth, you don't have to fight fear. You just have to stop letting it decide what you do. Let fear sit in the back seat if it wants, but don't let it hold the map. You hold the map now. This is your journey. Your voice. Your growth. So speak even when it's messy. Speak when your heart is pounding. Speak when the words come out wrong. Speak when you don't feel ready. Because you'll never regret trying. But you might regret staying silent one more day. Every time you choose to speak, you're not just learning English, you're proving something powerful to yourself, that you can do hard things. And that belief, that "I can do this" feeling, will follow you into every part of life. Not just in English. But in work. In relationships. In dreams. You'll stop saying "I'm not ready" and start saying "I'm learning," and that's enough. So the next time fear shows up and tries to take your voice, try this. Take a deep breath. Smile. And say it anyway. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. You know what's interesting? The moments when you almost speak, when the words are right there, sitting at the edge of your tongue, but fear stops you, those moments teach you something. They don't feel like progress, but they are. They're moments of friction. And friction is a sign that you're moving. You're rubbing up against your limit, and every time you do that, every time you almost speak, almost raise your hand, almost join the conversation, you're getting one step closer to actually doing it. And the day you do speak, even just a few words, that friction turns into freedom. But first, you have to give yourself permission. Permission to speak even if it's not smooth. Permission to try even if you mess up. Permission to sound different, because different is not wrong. Different is you. We're so used to thinking of English as something we need to fix our accent, fix our grammar, fix our vocabulary. But what if it's not about fixing anything? What if it's about expressing who you already are? You don't need to erase your identity to speak English. You can add English to your identity. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. You need to sound like yourself, in English. That shift in thinking, it changes everything. Because when you stop trying to sound right and start focusing on being real, your English becomes more alive. More honest. More you. Let me ask you this, have you ever heard someone speak English with an accent and thought, wow, they sound so confident? That's because confidence has nothing to do with pronunciation. It has everything to do with energy. With presence. With owning your voice, instead of apologizing for it. So own your voice. Own your way of speaking. Let people hear your story through your accent, not in spite of it. I know learners who try so hard to hide their accent, to sound more neutral, more native. But in that effort, they lose something special, the richness of where they come from. The rhythm of their culture. The music of their original language. That's not something to erase. That's something to celebrate. You're not less than because you speak with an accent. You're more. More experienced. More resilient. More multilingual. You know what's harder than speaking one language? Speaking two. Or three. And if you're doing that, if you're even trying, you are already impressive. So don't let anyone, including that critical voice inside your head, tell you you're behind. You're not behind. You're just becoming. And becoming takes time. It takes patience. It takes stumbling and standing back up. Again. And again. And again. That's what makes you strong. You might feel like your progress is slow. But progress that's built on courage is never small. It's the kind that lasts. Because once you've spoken through fear, once you've faced the moment and said the words anyway, no one can take that growth from you. And you'll remember it. The first time you answered the phone in English and didn't panic. The first time you asked for directions without writing it down first. The first time you told your story, your real story, in a second language. Those moments live in you. They're proof that you are not frozen. You are moving. You are growing into someone who is not just learning English, but living in it. And here's the wild thing, even on days when you feel like you're stuck, your brain is still learning. Still building new pathways. Still connecting sounds to meaning. Still adjusting to this new version of you. Because learning a language doesn't just change how you speak. It changes how you see the world. You start noticing details in conversations. You become more aware of how people express themselves. You listen more deeply. And that makes you better, not just at English, but at life. So if today feels like a slow day, or a quiet day, or even a step backward, don't worry. Those days are still part of the story. They don't erase your progress. They build it. Sometimes, the most important step forward is the one where you choose not to quit. And if you're still here, still listening, still showing up, I want you to feel that for a second. Breathe it in. You didn't give up. You didn't let fear win. You came back, again. To try. To grow. To speak. And that's why your English will improve. Because you keep showing up. That's what creates success. Not talent. Not luck. Not perfect grammar. Consistency. Courage. Compassion, for yourself. This is your journey. And every word you say is a step forward. Even the wrong ones. Even the silly ones. Even the ones you wish you could take back. So say them anyway. Because every step matters. Even the quiet ones. Even the ones no one sees. Even the ones you think are too small to count. They all count. You're not behind. You're on your way. And I promise you, the more you speak, the easier it gets. Not because English gets easier, but because you become stronger. And strong doesn't mean perfect. Strong means you keep going, even when it's hard. Strong means you whisper the words when you're too afraid to say them loudly, and then one day, you realize you're not whispering anymore. You're speaking. You're connecting. You're living, in a new language that once scared you. And now, it's part of you. So wherever you are right now, sitting at your desk, walking outside, taking a break between work or study, I want you to pause for just a second, and feel proud. Proud that you showed up for yourself today. Proud that you listened. Proud that you kept your heart open to this message. Because this isn't just about English. It's about you. And your courage. Today, you reminded yourself of something powerful. This is not a test. This is a journey. And you don't have to walk it fast. You just have to keep walking. You don't need to wait for perfect grammar to speak. You don't need to wait for confidence to begin. You don't need to wait for anyone's permission to take up space in English. That permission is already yours. Right now. The next time you feel stuck, the next time you hesitate, the next time you're hard on yourself, I hope you hear this voice, gently reminding you. You're learning. You're growing. You're doing better than you think. And I hope you smile. Because this isn't just progress. This is transformation. This is your story, one word, one sentence, one brave moment at a time. You've come so far. And you're not done yet. So thank you for being here with me on Easy Peasy English, the podcast where we don't chase perfection, we celebrate progress. Where we don't judge mistakes, we learn from them. And where we remind each other that language is not just about words, it's about confidence, connection, and becoming more of who you already are. If today's episode gave you a little hope, a little strength, or a new way to see your journey, then you're exactly where you need to be. Keep listening. Keep speaking. Keep showing up. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be you. And the world needs to hear your voice. Until next time, I'm so proud of you. Stay curious. Stay brave. And remember, your English doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. See you in the next episode. You've got this.